This lesson is going to be an example of how you can use map in order to update and create a brand new array from contents of an initial array. So we've got our basic array there, and then we're using map where we're returning back the items from the array, and we're combining the index and the item value. And then we're updating some of the arrays as well. We're going to create a new array. This is all going to be numbers, and then returning back a value of the number times 2. So it's going to be another array that we're going to be creating, and that's output within the console. And also how you can use the callback method and pick up the values of either the item, the index, and the array, and then use them within a callback function. Also how you can construct an array with a bunch of objects contained within it, and then rebuild it. And in this case, we've got an array with a first name and a last name. So these are the property names. We're going to be combining them using the map method into objects that just say full name, and they have the first and the last name combined, as well as a shorter format where we can do the full and have the full name combined within the one statement using map. Let's go ahead and create an array, and then we're going to use this array with the various array methods. So add in some default values into the array. So they can be strings, also numbers, and they can also just be Boolean values. So whatever values that you want to add into the array. So that will give us some items there within the array. And let's first output the array using the console log, and output the array into the console. I've got the console opened up on the right hand side within the browser using the Chrome browser, and that's the dev tools that we're able to output the values there. So let's take a look at what we can do with map. So what map does is it allows us to create a brand new array from an existing array, and the results of the content that we're returning back. So as we loop through the existing array, we take the array, and using map allows us to map the content. So if we want to take the array and add content into it, we can get the array item as well as the index and the parent array as well, and then use those within the block of code as we're looping through the map. And then whatever we're returning back, so if we were to return back just item and output the result of the newly created array. So this is going to be a completely detached array, so it's not going to be attached to the initial array. Whereas if you were just to create an array and assign it to another array, these arrays are both going to be pointing to the same memory location. So updating array 2, and let's add a new value into array 2, will also update both of them. So both of those arrays are going to be outputting the same values, so it doesn't matter which one we are selecting. And when we use map, that's going to create a brand new independent array, so outputting a completely separate set of values. And right now what we're doing is we're returning the item, so that's why this is different. But if we were to, again, to push another value of new into array, that's not going to be present within the array 1 anymore. So it's not there, but it is within the array. So there's the 2 news at the end as well as array 2, because once again these are going to be connected and they're actually going to be outputting the same content. So you can reference that array content using ARR or ARR2, and when we use map, we're creating a new item. So within the map, we can create some variables and then return back that value. So instead of returning back the actual item, I'm going to return it back as whatever the variable is. And then here we're going to recreate a new string value, so using the index value of the array and then output the item. So we can separate that, and now the new array is going to have the index values of those initial items. So if we did have an array, so let's create a new array and add in all numbers within the array. And what we'll do is we'll do some math with the numbers, so we'll multiply them by 2. So because this array that has some strings and other data types, it's going to make it a little bit harder. So create a new array, and using the map, and get the item from the array. And if we just want to perform one statement, we can return it back within the same line of code and take the item and multiply it by 2. So this can also, maybe we want to represent it as a value. So it's going to be a value of whatever we've got for the array, and we're simply returning back a doubled value. So this is a quick way how you can double the value of the contents of the array. So it's going to return back those contents of the array, and now they're duplicated. So within the map as well, you can do a callback. So let's create a function that will handle the callback. So this is our callback function. And within the callback function, we want to do the same thing that we did here, where we're going to do a duplicating. So let's create another array, so call it ARR5. And here we're going to take the value of ARR3 and then using map. And instead of adding in a value, we're just going to use the callback function. So this will just return back as the callback statement. So it will run this function, and if we want to get the value, we can get the values of the items within the array. So that can come in within the callback function. And for now, we're going to output this, and we'll see what we get returned back. So right now, this is going to be still referring to the window object. So just as we saw before, where we can use map and we can get item, index, and array, it's not going to be referencing the current object array, as this is going to be still referencing the window, but we can still get the item, the index, and the array the same way as we did within the original function. So those arguments are still going to be passed in, and if we're getting item, then we're returning back whatever the item is as we're looping through it. And that means that we can also do a return, just as we did before, where we've got the item and multiply it by 2. So that's going to be the value that we're returning, and then ultimately within the console, let's output the new value of the new array that we've created. So that's going to return back a doubled value of the array, and using the callback method in order to accomplish that. So the return value is going to be the item that's going to be added into the new array. And the callback by default can pass in all 3 of these. Now you don't have to. If you just need to use the item, then you can just use the callback in the item. And this is referenced in the order. So if you have the item as the first, then the second value is going to be the index, and the third one is going to be the array. So if we wanted to map out a set of objects that are contained within an array, so we're going to create another array. So call this array 6. And within this array, we're going to have a bunch of objects. And these objects are going to have a first name. And then as we loop through the objects in the array, we want to output the results of those. So that will just be a couple entries there. And these objects can contain multiple properties and values. So I'm structuring them the same, so that way, as we're iterating through them within the map, we can make use of them. So let's do a return back, and we're going to create another array out of that array with the objects, and we can console log out array number 6 as well, so we can see it within the console. So setting up and assigning the array 6 and using the map. And as we map through and loop through each one of the items, and before we do that, we'll actually also add in to the object. So we'll get the last name as well. So this will be a property value for the last name. And then we'll do a combination for the last and the first using the map. So selecting out the contents and then returning back those values. And let's make sure that the structure is the same as we're looping through each one, that we're able to return back the proper values. So within the map, we're going to have the item, and then outputting the item contents. We'll do it within the console log. And then we can just do a return. Right now, we'll just do a return of the item itself, as we're not going to be changing anything within the item quite yet. Output into the console log the result for array 7, and save that. So now, right now, we're not getting anything different, and as we're looping through on line 26, we're just getting the object values, so those property values. So if we wanted to return back the values there. So if we want to get the first and the last name values of the object as we're looping through there, let's see what we get back here for first, not returning back the item. So if we want to just get the first names, so that will create an array of the first names. We're outputting the first names of the items in the object. Let's also output the last name. So there's the first name and the last name. So this way, we could return back a value. So set this up as using whatever the first name is, and then space that out, and also the last name. So this is going to just return back now the full names of the users. If you want to return it back within an object format, you can do that as well. We're going to return it back as an object, so that will mimic that current array of items, but we're going to be outputting it as an object. So let's just clean this up a little bit, where we're returning back and getting a object name of user, and then this user value is going to be the string value of the first and the last that we've got from the original object. So now when we open it, there's our original array of objects and items in there, and now there's our new updated one where we've just got the user and the full name that's being returned back, or we could call this as well full name, and that would work. That would work the same way, where we're outputting the property name now as full name within the object. And this is all done with the map method. And there's also a way to shorten this. So let's do a shorter format of what we just did in array number 7, where we're going to take the array 6 data and then using map, and using the map data, the same as we did over here, we'll take that content, but we want to just simply return it back as whatever the full name is. So it's going to be returned back within this format, and save it. And now let's console log out what we've got for the results for array number 8. And I'll update this to just say full so that we can distinguish between the two. So right now we're still not returning back the object properly, and we're still getting the undefined being sent there. And that's because this needs to be wrapped in the rounded bracket as we're returning back the object contents. And now when we save that, now we've got the same structure, but we've done it essentially within one line of code, where we've set that and we've returned it back as an object and combined the first and last name within the one array using map. So go ahead and try it out, and try out some of the different values that you can return back, and how you can update and manipulate your array contents using map when you're constructing new arrays using the map method.